shortly. And you see, we started from 2008 all the way to 2025. And you see the performance of the bank over the period. All the way from 2008 to somewhere 2017, the bank was making some marginal gains. But from 2017, it made some losses, which amounted to over 1.6 billion, cedis. Then it dropped a bit into 2018 to about 793 million cedis. Then somewhere in 2019, it started making some profits, but the major loss actually occurred in 2022, where the bank actually lost 60.8 billion cedis. And the loss continued in 2023, 2024, and in 2025. That's the figure we are discussing tonight. It made about 15.6 billion cedis loss. So that is it. But let's look at a profit from sale of half of Ghana's gold reserve. We're told the Bank of Ghana sold some gold reserves and made some profit of 9.5 billion cedis. Why was that sale important? We'll find out. Now, let's look at the Bank of Ghana's policy solvency over the period. And you see that chart on the screen. And it tells you interest income calculated using the effective interest method in 2024. You see the figure there. And then that's about 7,472,450. But in 2025, there was an increase, which ended up to 8,457,241. If you track the net income from other financial instruments at FVPL, you see that there's some little increase also there. In 2024, that recorded about 1,057,599. But in 2025, there was an increase of 1,125,659. Now, let's look at the fees and commissions income. In 2024, the bank made 464,793. But in 2025 that we are discussing, there's an increase, 704,322. And other operating income also, we have seen some decline there. In 2024, the figure was increase rather. The figure was a bit lower in 2024, but there's an increase, huge increase there, from 394,248 in 2024. The bank is recording over 2 million cedis. That's a bit significant. But here's the thing: the net gain from the sale of the refined gold that we spoke about, the bank made 9,571,094. And we'll have to interrogate that. So this is the chart that we are discussing tonight, and we'll go deeper into all of these indicators to really understand. But of course, some have said that the BOG would have been policy insolvent without the sale of the gold reserve. How true is that? We'll find out from the Bank of Ghana tonight. And also, the Bank of Ghana's loss position minus a profit from gold sale. It means that if the gold had not been sold, its profits would have stood at 33 billion cedis. Is that the true figure? We'll find out from the Bank of Ghana tonight. And of course, the Bank of Ghana's equity position from 2020 to 2024 is what you're seeing on the screen. And all the way to 2025, you see that there's a 93.8 million or billion cedis, as you say, in 2025. It tells you how bad the situation is. Now, let's continue to see how the banks performed. When it comes to reasons for Bank of Ghana's losses, they've given us so far about 3 reasons. One, they say open market operations is part of the reason why the 15.6 billion loss has occurred. And the second reason they are telling us is gold purchase program, which also contributed significantly to the 15.6 billion loss. And of course, if you go to the market and your exchange rate is stabilized, they're telling us foreign exchange losses also is part of the reason why we are recording that figure. And so those are the reasons you see. This one has to do with the open market operations, and you see the contribution to the loss. And then we can continue to look at the other indicators that actually also contributed to it. That's the gold purchase. And you see the figure there in 2025, it's recording about 9 billion Ghana cedis. In 2024, it was just about 5.7 billion cedis. So that's an increase there. And reason for Bank of Ghana's loss, forex losses, it says it lost about 5.4 billion cedis, which also, is part of the loss we are discussing tonight. So that's how the picture is looking. But here is the scorecard. After spending all this money, all these losses, the Bank of Ghana inflation rate has been able to be brought down to 5.4%, which is actually a good news. And exchange rate has also stabilized. $1 is going for about 10 cedi 45 pesos now. And our international reserves has also increased. We are seeing about $13.8 billion. And lending rate is there 20.45. So that is the scorecard, and that's the reason the Bank of Ghana is telling us they've made the losses, and that's what we're going to be interrogating tonight. But the new Patriotic Party in the Parliament is challenging the Bank of Ghana figures. They are insisting the bank recorded a staggering 44 billion loss in 2025, far more than the 15.6 billion figure the Bank of Ghana is telling us. Listen to them.
The government and its spin doctors, led by the NDC party officials who did that press conference, are trying to convince the people of Ghana that the loss is 15.6 billion Ghana cedis. And colleagues, we don't blame you. We've seen many of you reporting that the loss is 15.6 billion cedis. We regret to tell the people of Ghana that this is not true. The true operating loss of the Bank of Ghana for the year 2025 is 34.9 billion Ghana cedis. And in fact, if you add back the sale of the gold, or the proceeds from the sale of the gold, the 9.6 that I've just shown you, the true comprehensive loss position of the Central Bank of Ghana is 44 billion Ghana cedis. As I mentioned earlier, the Bank of Ghana has employed a combination of artificial revenue recognition on one hand and clever accounting on another hand to try and cover up this loss. Now, this is the consolidated and separate statements of other comprehensive income for the year ended 31st December 2025. Before, the Bank of Ghana did not split its accounts into two. They put all the accounts in one, in accordance with the International Financial Reporting Standards. On the watch of this new administration, they have amended the accounting standards they are using, and now they split it into two and move some into what they call the other comprehensive income. So what you have seen as the 15.6 is only the operating loss that they have declared in the operating accounts. But when you go to the consolidated and separate statements of the comprehensive income for the year ended 31st December 2025, we want to show you something else that they are hoping nobody will look at. Look at the first line. That is the loss for the year, the 15.6 for the bank itself, and 15.3 for the entire group, because they have subsidiaries. But as you go down a little bit, you will find that there are other transactions they have done that will culminate, we'll show you another line, go down a bit, that will culminate in a loss of, this is an additional loss of 19.3 billion cedis for the bank and 19.8 for the group. So if you want to see the true loss that the bank has suffered, it's not just the headline 15.6 that they have told you. It's the 15.6 at the top, and then the 19.8 at the bottom. For the bank alone, that is 34.9 billion Ghana cedis. That's the true operating loss. And for the group, it is 35 billion cedis. So colleagues, the second point we want to make to you is that, contrary to what they are telling you, that the loss is 15.6 billion, please look into the account. You will find that the 19 billion has been moved into other comprehensive income. And if you put the two together, it's 34 billion. And that's why we're also drawing your attention to the fact that even this 34 billion, they achieved it by artificially generating revenue of about 9 billion from 50% of our gold which they sold. So if you add that back, sadly, the true loss of the central bank for the year 2025 is 44 billion Ghana cedis.
Well, how true are these claims by the minority? Was the Bank of Ghana loss avoidable, self-inflicted, or unnecessary evil? Well, tonight we'll probe that. We'll get to hear the Bank of Ghana's first official explanation for this loss. I'm joined in the studio by Bernard Otterbill. He is the Director of Communications for the Bank of Ghana. Grateful to have you in studio.
Thank you.
Also joining the conversation is Professor Kwesi Pepra. He is a finance professor in the Andrews University in the United States. Grateful to have you also join us all the way from the United States.
Thank you.
And joining the conversation also is Nyami Befi. Dr. Nyami Befi is a lecturer and also an economist. He's a lecturer at GIMPA. Grateful to have you here on Probe tonight. This broadcast is live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV 125. We also live on Joy 99.7 FM and Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi. We are on myjoyonline.com across the world. And of course, we also on YouTube. You can catch us live on Facebook everywhere you are. And of course, you can also join the conversation by sending your comments and your questions, and we'll get to read them for the rest of the world. My name is Carlos Calony. We get back with all the answers. Stay with us.
Across Ghana, in communities big and small, ordinary people are doing extraordinary things. This is the Joy News Impact Makers Awards 2026, celebrating those who are changing lives, shaping futures, and building hope. From Bimbila in the northern region, Faith Jakpasu is transforming classrooms through innovation, inclusive learning, and life-changing initiatives for students, teachers, and vulnerable communities. From Aflao in the Volta region, Felix Akakbo is building schools, supporting students, and investing in the future of an entire community. In health, from Winneba in the central region, Amos Ando is turning his personal battle with sickle cell into a national movement for awareness, prevention, and policy change. From Nkwanta in the Oti region, Bless Lantam is delivering life-changing healthcare to hard-to-reach communities, even in the face of conflict. From Insawamed Wedri in the eastern region, Antonio Say is restoring mobility, dignity, and opportunity through prosthetics and outreach across Ghana. From Adenta in the Greater Accra region, Valerie Ajatia is empowering amputees with hope, rehabilitation, and the courage to rebuild their lives. From Anyanui and Noga in the Volta region, Reverend Christian Valeto is rescuing, treating, and reintegrating neglected mental health patients back into society. From Akuse in the eastern region, Alberta Aite is mentoring, educating, and empowering over 1,000 girls to dream beyond limitations. From Singabreku in the central region, Isabella Akwabwa fighting period poverty and equipping women and girls with skills for independence. In Wash, from Sirigu in the Upper East region, Dr. Anthony Akunzele is improving livelihoods through clean water, education, and economic opportunities for women. From Akache in the Volta region, Senyor Bomita is transforming communities through schools, clean water, healthcare access, and youth empowerment. And for the Corporate Partner Award from the Cape Coast Youth Development Association is empowering thousands of young people through education, skills training, and community development. These are not just finalists. These are change makers. They are nation builders. They are Ghana's true heroes. Joy News Impact Makers Awards, celebrating ordinary people making extraordinary impacts. Who takes this home?
The 2026 Joy News Impact Makers Awards is brought to you by Ghana CEO Summit, a decade of leadership impact. Labadi Beach Hotel, Ayuda, Ghana's #1 services app. Abakun, Services Bebre, New Crystal Hospital, growing in good health. Sulas Enterprise, where quality meets affordability. Water Aid Ghana, change starts with water. Ghana Chamber of Mines.
Mothers give us everything: love, strength, and life itself. And it's time to give back. Joy FM
presents the Joy Mommy's Day Out.
Join us on Saturday,
May 9th,
for a day bursting with thrills. We'll have your day packed with irresistible activities like paddle boating on calm waters, an adrenaline rush with horseback riding, quad biking, exciting safari tour, friendly competitions such as dance contests, and wrap the prize, a chance to meet the mysterious Ujafokwa crocodile revered as the protector, and to top it all off, a delicious feast of local dishes and drinks, accompanied by the sensational sounds of the Ajinkor Band. Come, let's crown our mothers with joy and adventure at the Crown Forest. For inquiries, call Lois on 059-1709-309. The Joy FM Crown Forest experience is proudly brought to you by the Crown Forest, where nature meets luxury.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. And of course, this is The Probe, and we are live on Joy 99.7 FM. And we're also live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV 125. And we are discussing the Bank of Ghana's 15.6 billion loss that many are raising concerns about. Some believe that the figure could be even higher than that. But of course, we are fortunate to have the Bank of Ghana join us in studio for the very first time since this figure came out, and to really tell us. Bernard Ottobel is the Director of Communication for the Bank of Ghana. Grateful to have you in studio.
Grateful to have you too, Carlos.
Did you lose $15 billion or more? How much did you lose?
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity. If you look at our operating statement, the income statement tells you exactly what the loss is, which is 15.6 billion. But before I go into explaining the financial position, let me just say this, that oftentimes the balance sheet of a central bank is a poor reflection of its performance over the period. And why do I say this? If you look at a commercial entity, commercial entity with the profit maximization, concept, the goal is profit maximization. So you then see that most commercial entities will be looking at value creation, value preservation, and value realization. So if they would either be getting money out of their operations, or if you invest in it, you want to see capital growth or dividend and so on and so forth from a private entity. Our mandate is very different, Carlos. And that is something that a lot of people, not just central banks, just as Bank of Ghana, but all monetary authorities have this mandate, which is very, very unique.
What is your mandate?
Our mandate is maintain stability in the general level of prices. And if you go to the Bank of Ghana Act, it is clear. Of course, this is also subordinated by other objectives as well. So that mandate of price stability is what we pursue. We call it a very narrow mandate. So the Bank of Ghana, let me make it very clear, is committed to maintaining stability in the general level of prices.
At that cost?
And I'll come to that. And you realize that, look, it is not the cost that you should be looking at, but looking at the total benefit that the economy stands to gain when prices are stable. Because when you allow inflation, for example, to be out of the roof, what then happens? You cannot plan. Businesses cannot plan, right? Individuals cannot plan. And everything is out of gear. And you look at it from our scorecard that I'll be sharing with you in a few minutes, and you see it's not that the cost that we are looking at, but what actually went into it and the total broader economic effect that we all be experiencing. Now, that must be established. If prices are stable, or if we are able to achieve our mandate, which we will say that 8 plus or minus 2%, what then happens is that it feeds back. It's a precondition for attaining sustainable economic development.
At this point, have we attained that stability?
Carlos, the scorecard is very clear. The scorecard is very clear. If you look at where we've come from, for instance, inflation that used to be 23.8% is now 5.4%, right? Which is clear, which is all stated there. Now, exchange rate, we used to be 14.7%, 14.7 cedis at the end of December 2024. It was 10.45 cedis at the end of December 2025. Now, our public debt, which was 61.8% at the end of December 2024, was 45.3% at the end of December 2025. I'm bringing this up because the period of the account is what we're looking at.
Right.
That's from 1st January 2025 to 31st December 2025. That's what we're looking at. Now, look at the reserve position. We've accumulated, unprecedented reserve levels from 9.1 billion at the end of December 2024 to 13.8 billion at the end of December 2025. I can go on and on because all the macroeconomic indicators is pointing up, and it shows that there was a cost element to whatever we achieved. So the balance sheet that you see today, or the financial statement that we presented, is actually the translation of the cost of the economic benefits that I have mentioned now. Now, having stated that, let me go straight to the issue to do with what the operating cost really was in the course of the year. Now, you've mentioned 15.6 billion.
Right.
That's correct.
That is what you are mentioning.
That is correct. And that is what is stated in the financial statement.
Okay.
Now, IS1, for example, it tells you what kind of financial statement that can be produced. Income statement is one part of it. Now, the presentation that we made, if you look at that presentation, and I'll explain why all these numbers are coming about. If you look at the presentation that we made in the financial statement, the 15.6 billion reported in 2025 as the operating loss for that year. That statement, that income statement that everybody who is an accountant is used to, will tell you that these are the statements that will record the transactional activity that go in there. So, for example, if you are, for a layman's understanding, I'm having a little grocery shop that I operate, right? In that grocery shop, I'll pay for electricity, I'll pay for water, I'll pay for wages, I'll pay for other expenses. These are all incidental costs to the business that I'm doing, and that can easily be measured in that. That goes through the income statement, and at the end of the day, you have your operating cost, operating income, and then you have your operating expenses. So that gives you your loss.
So what you are giving us now is just the operating cost, as stated,
no,
right?
In the account gives you all the other components.
So what we have now, the 15.6 billion,
yes,
includes everything.
The 15.6 billion is the income statement. That's what I'm explaining to you.
Okay.
Then we have another one, which is the OCI, other comprehensive income charge. Now, you see the other comprehensive income charge of 19.3 thereabout in that OCI. Why is OCI very important? And why are we talking about OCI? Other comprehensive income statement is not a creation of the Bank of Ghana. Accounting standard boards and all other bodies that want to ensure that accounting statements are prepared in a way that would not include volatile items in the income statement or in the interest income statement, would want you to separate, I repeat, would want you to separate some of these volatile items from the income statement. So you realize that within the OCI, which we would call, some would describe it unrealized amounts. So for example, if you have a stock that is marked to be sold, and then the stock value goes up, you have not sold it yet, this becomes an unrealized amount. So within the accounting treatment, it tells you that if you should bring this into the income statement, it actually distorts the statement as presented. So then the buffer created by OCI is to ensure that when you are reading the account, you would rather be looking at the actually generated income from the operational activities of the business from the other income that comes from some volatile items. So OCI in the treatment, in the technical terms, for example, you would find defined pension schemes valuation, actual valuation of defined pension schemes, you find it in an OCI. When you have foreign currency translation, it goes into OCI. When you have, as I stated earlier, when you have something marked for market which has not been sold, or realized profits on revaluation, this goes into it. But because these are items that you are not, or it's not part of your core business activity, but are so volatile that when you put it into the income statement, you are likely going to distort the true meaning of it.
So if you put the OCI...
So I'm just coming to it. I'm coming to it. When you do the OCI calculation, it doesn't end there.
Okay.
There's another leg to it, which is called the total comprehensive income. Mm-hmm. Significantly, what people should really understand is that there are two legs here. When you do the from the income statement, that value that you get actually hits retained earnings. Mm. The OCI, total comprehensive income balance, will now be hitting your equity position. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about movement, the shareholder funds and so on and so on, I don't want to go too technical along this line, but I'm telling you where those numbers are coming from. So the income statement one will hit the retained earnings, then the OCI component, the total comprehensive income, which will come from the OCI level, will go into the movement in equity. So when we did the OCI, and the OCI, there's something significant there that I will tell you in a few minutes. When you do the OCI, you get that 19.3 value. When you do the operating income bid, you get a 15.6 billion level. Now, the total comprehensive income, which looks at what you got from the operating income side of your account and what came out of the OCI, total comprehensive income now goes into the movement in the shareholder fund. That's the equity section of it.
Is that not the reason why some are saying that the total loss could be about 44 billion?
You know, in terms of the interpretation of financial statement, we have to be very, very careful, right? Because I always keep saying cash is fact, profit is an opinion. When you look at all your cash transactions, that will feed into your income statement and you see the true value of what you are getting. Now, when you go to the OCI, the reason why sometimes it is always useful to create that buffer to actually take out those unrealized elements is that even when it comes to valuation of those components within those OCI items, there are various valuation methods that are being used there.
Okay.
Like the price earning ratios and so on and so forth. So the OCI is a buffer. So for instance, let's get a bit more practical here. Our performance, that's why I said earlier, that the central bank balance sheet is often not a true reflection of its performance over the period. The OCI loss that you see there is not an actual loss that has arisen because there's been movement of cash. It is actually a reflection of how well we did in 2025. You have foreign asset denominated assets, and it's a very simple thing that you can understand. Let's say that you have a foreign asset, right, which is worth $1 at the end of December 2024. That foreign asset translated into the OCI will give you 14 cedis 70 pesos. Because we always translate all this into our base currency, which is the cedi. At the end of December 2025, that foreign asset of $1 will now become 10.45 cedis at the end of December 2025. You see that differential? You see that difference? So foreign currency translation, when it comes to the OCI, OCI captures all these things. When you do revaluation of an asset, right? When you revalue an asset and the asset is not actually involving any specific movement, you also capture it within this particular space. But in our case, in the account of 2025, you see it clearly how the OCI figure actually came about. It is a reflection of how well we did in 2025. So
it's inaccurate to say that the OCI is part of, and if it were to be added to the thing, the total loss could have gone to... It depends on the loss figure you are looking at, right? It depends on the loss figure you are looking at, given that the operating loss for the period, which actually directly speaks to what went into the work that we did. And in accounting treatment, all these other translations must be done. But the OCI is a buffer that tells you that these realized activities, and these are volatile activities. So, for example, if the cedi were to be at, let's say, 15 cedis at the end of December 2025, you would have had a much bigger figure on the foreign assets denominated in foreign currency. So we did so well that our foreign assets,
which now has been translated to the base currency, actually hits our balance sheet. And I repeat, it hit our balance.
So the OCI is not part of the 15.6 billion.
No.
Tell us what and what constituted that 15.6 billion.
It's right there in the income statement, right? When you go there, when you go to the operating statement, you see the line items of what went into it. There are a number of significant things that went into it.
But one was one.
I'm coming to it. There are a number of things. So there are 3 headline items, as you rightly pointed out. So you have an OMO cost of 16.7 billion. Why OMO? That is what I spoke to you about earlier. The OMO cost is the aggressive stabilization that the bank had to undertake in order to mop up excess liquidity from the system. And I stated earlier, the central bank, and everybody must get it clear, is committed to maintaining stability in the general level of prices. Because even within a managed floating exchange rate system, once you have that stability, it also impacts on the exchange rate. And the scorecard doesn't lie. All the things are there. So you have 16.7 billion on OMO cost alone to mop up the excess liquidity from the system. The Bank of Ghana took the cost so that the ordinary person on the street would benefit. Just quite recently, there was a program which was like a public forum, and you heard people speak to what has actually happened over the period in terms of the stabilization that they have experienced. We were coming from somewhere, actually, and we shouldn't lose sight of it.
But some are raising the concern that this is not the first time the Bank of Ghana is doing this OMO operation. Why is it costing us so much this time? So, you understand the argument they make it?
OMO is a very significant monetary policy tool that we employ.
So over the years?
Over the years, we've been doing that.
How much were we recording over the years?
You see, economies are not deterministic. And you should never try to solve economic problems with neat equations. I've heard those arguments. Our phrases, our inactions, whatever, actually contribute to macroeconomic outcomes. So people will tell you that 2 years ago, we did this, and therefore it should be this. That is not the kind of deterministic approach in dealing with economic problems. Now, why am I saying this? In the same vein, some are saying that we did so much over a certain period of time, and this is how much we spent. Have we also considered, right, where inflation was at the end of December 2024, 23.8% to 5.4% at the end of December 2025? What was the debt to GDP ratio at the time? And remember that once, as I stated earlier, once you've been able to get inflation under control within a managed floating exchange rate regime that we have, it also impacts on the exchange rate. And once the exchange rate is strengthening, you see that our debt to GDP ratio would come down naturally. Because at the end of the day, when you do the translation, you will be getting a much lower figure. That's one thing that you should be looking at.
Right.
So that 16.7 billion was a necessary cost that the bank had to incur in order to bring inflation down. And the benefit is the 77% drop in inflation over a 12 month.
How much are we likely to pay for OMO operations next year? Or this year, when we are reporting next year?
As I said, economists are not deterministic, and we don't.
But of course, you have projections.
We don't solve economic problems with neat equations. However, I can tell you something. What I can tell you is that if you look at the kind of aggressive sterilization or mopping up that we had to do within the period under consideration, and you look at where we are now in terms of how the macroeconomy is behaving, how our monetary policy rate is, because the OMO cost that comes out, how does it come about? In order to mop this excess liquidity in plain language, there must be some incentive. So we issue the Bank of Ghana bills, the bulk bills, which the commercial banks buy, and we compensate them with the payment of interest. You know, payment of interest, which is more linked with our OMO rate, our monetary policy rate.
Right.
So the OMO rate that we give them is linked to that. Now, if you look at the trajectory where we want, the disinflation, path that we are on now, and the trajectory we are going, what you notice is that even as the MPR is coming down, the cost of this sterilization is also going to come down. That's one thing that we should bear in mind. So it all feeds into the whole cycle.
So we are not likely to see another 15.6 billion if we are reporting next year for this year, 2020.
Based on the macroeconomic figures that we have now and the projections that we have, we are most likely going to see a much better performance of the central bank in 2026. Why am I saying this? 2025, you can all see where we were and how we had to engage and the level we had to engage. One other component is the domestic gold purchase program. And we've spoken at length as to what we are doing in terms of the reforms that we've instituted in order to ensure that the hit that we got, in terms of the hit that we got for, last year, will not be repeated for this particular year. And there are a number of explanations to that.
So you accept that there were some mistakes when it comes to the gold purchase program, where, the sales you made and the profit you made were not really good for the bank?
Let me say that in every enterprise that you are in, even when you are doing IT work, right, you do bug fixing and you do system enhancement. There may be bugs within the system, and we realized there were some bugs that needed to be fixed, which were fixed. Some of the fees had to be revised downwards. The off-taker discounts had to be also revised downwards. And all this took place in that particular period. But the whole thing is that why DGPP and why should we get involved in it? It helps in reserve accumulation. And it did also help in us having that confidence in the currency. Now, if you're having a reserve accumulation more than 5.7 months of import cover, it also gives confidence. So the attendant benefit is what we all see.
Okay. All right. Stay with me. Let me go to Zoom and speak to Professor Williams Kwesi Pepra. He is Professor of Finance at Andrews University. First of all, this 15.6 billion cedis that the Bank of Ghana is telling us is a loss, based on the operations in 2025. How would you describe it? Do you think it's actually a necessary evil, as we are being told this evening by Bernard Otabil? Kindly unmute so we hear what you're saying, Prof.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I wrote an article on this just after it coming out, and I made a statement that what has happened is that Bank of Ghana operations is, in terms of operation, is very resilient, and then in terms of looking at only their income statement is showing heavy effect of impairment. Because of my background with both accounting and finance, I understand what is happening. But I'm going to say something which is very, very important. When you look at the income statement, it contains both cash and non-cash transactions. So when you talk of a loss, there are those accounting transactions which the minority is referring to them as the artificial and all of that. This is coming out as a result of the accounting transaction. So if you are doing an assessment or evaluation of a central bank, we must pay more attention to their cash flow statement.
Yeah.
Your cash flow statement will tell you how cash or money is moving in and out of the central bank. And that will let you know whether the bank, one, is policy solvent, and two, whether they are resilient in terms of addressing economic challenges. First part you have to look out for, and for the accountants, IAS 7, which is how we prepare the income cash flow statement. The first part is on your operating activity, the day-to-day activity of the central bank. If you compare 2024 to 2025, you will see a major significant improvement in Bank of Ghana's operation, meaning in terms of policy compliance and resilience, the Bank of Ghana's existence day-to-day is solid. However, when it comes to their ability to address the economic issues, the one that the communicating director is talking about, is where you look at the investing activities, because the investing activities is where the OMO transactions, the reserves transactions, all of them are happening. And in some, if you go back to Bank of Ghana's books, you notice that in some months, in some years, they were showing a positive investment activities, and now they are showing a negative investment activities. And this is coming because from 2023 to 2025, Bank of Ghana has been doing a correction or supporting a correction of the economy, which is what they are saying. They are focusing on their economic mandate, which is ensuring price stability. So that effect is what is happening in the investment activity. And then the last part is the financing activity. Where is Bank of Ghana getting its money from, or how are they paying their loans? These two are in 2025 shows negative, meaning the impact of the economy, they are trying to address it. And then if you put all together, you ask yourself, if you are doing a business, profit, as we have discussed, it has an accounting impact. But what is most important to all of us is that, do we have the cash to survive as a central bank? And you go to the cash flow statement, it will tell you that yes, if you compare 2024 to 2025, indeed, the central bank has the cash to survive going forward, which is in 2026, because for the group, their cash end as at 2024 was 42 billion, and as at 2025 was 50 billion for the group. In terms for the bank itself, it moved from 33.8 billion to 45.1 billion. So in terms of cash, whatever discussion we are having, whether yes, accounting transaction will have an impact, we may have to ask ourselves, if something should happen today, will the central bank have the money to bail us out, like it happened in COVID, to support the economy? And yes, indeed, it points to that fact. However, saying this, let me also say that there have been some decisions in the past by the central bank that has brought us to this point.
In the past,
and I'm very glad that the communication director is here to explain. Every year, they should come and explain to us their financial statements, so that the politicians will not be playing games with their mandate. Now, from what is happening, there is a major questioning on the independence of the central bank, whether yes, indeed, our central bank is independent from.
Do you think the central bank is independent from where you sit?
And from what is happening, I could say that heavily our central bank is not independent. From the way we appoint people into the board, the way we get, we explain issues, taking entrenched positions by political parties and supporting every decision by the central bank. And then when you leave, you just say that the other decisions are wrong. I mean, it affects the central bank independence. And lastly, when the central bank independence is affected, it affects the confidence level. This is what is happening. With all the things happening, people are just talking about losses. And they are saying it because of the political gains that will come to it. But if you pay attention to the cash flow statement, which to the layman, this is where we must pay attention to, because cash is king. Cash is cash. There's nothing like you have the money, or there's no money. That is the most important thing.
Okay, thank you. Hold your thought there. Let me go to Dr. Nyame Befi. What's your take on all the explanations being given by the Bank of Ghana? And of course, what Professor Kwesi Pepra just explained, that he believes that the Bank of Ghana is in a stronger position going forward. You agree? Kindly unmute so we hear you, sir.
So first of all, good evening to you once more again, and good evening to your listeners. I'm actually enjoying the discussion that is ongoing. And I think one major thing that first of all we need to understand, that we need to get, is on this 15.6 billion loss versus the 44 billion loss, as reported by the minority. Because I mean, when you started the show, we were doing a trend analysis looking at the central bank losses over the years.
Right.
And the question we should be asking ourselves is that, first of all, if we look at the losses in 2022, which was 60.8 billion, that total loss of 60.8 billion doesn't actually include the other comprehensive income losses? Does it include other losses, or is just the income statement losses? And if that is the case, then I mean, if we want to do a proper comparison or a proper analysis of the losses over the years, then it would be fair to, I mean, add the other comprehensive income loss to the net loss as presented by the central bank, which was 15.6 billion, other comprehensive income loss, which is 19.3 billion, bringing us to the over 33 billion Ghana cedis loss, as you know, the minority is saying. But I do actually understand that indeed the mandate of the central bank, which we should actually be looking at, is maintaining price stability, and obviously also looking at the economic growth, economic development, and so on and so forth. But once we are looking at the price stability mandate of the central bank, the question is, what is the target that was set by the central bank in terms of price stability? I mean, the target set by the central bank was plus or minus 2%. That is within the medium term, the inflationary target set by the central bank. Now the question is, could we have achieved this inflationary target without the losses that we're actually seeing? And we would then have to go before that and go prior to 2025 and look at the inflationary figures. I mean, from the post-COVID high inflation figures of over 50%, now coming all the way down to somewhere around 23.16%, with the IMF report in April 2024 clearly predicting that Ghana was going to achieve a single-digit inflation of 3%, which would have definitely been within that inflationary target, the band that has been set by the central bank, meaning that the policy choices of the central bank then could have helped us also to, I mean, the targets that was set by the central bank without necessarily impairing these huge losses that we are currently seeing.
Okay.
And if you listen to the governor of the central bank, you know, when he was being sworn in as governor of the central bank, I mean, one of or some of the promises he actually made was to reverse the loss making of the central bank, and also to reverse the negative equity position of the central bank to a positive equity situation. Now the question is, have we been able to achieve that? If those were the targets or promises by the central bank government? The answer is no. And one other thing, and this argument that we keep hearing by, you know, some academics, some economics, is that, we could just look at the economic benefit, and that if we look at the accounting loss, it could be justified because.
But like you rightly said, that's the job of the Bank of Ghana. So if it comes at a cost, but be able to stabilize the system, we should. So that's why I'm making the argument that, first of all, we could have achieved these numbers. If you look at the gross international reserve, they had increased from somewhere over $4 billion in 2016 to about $9 billion to the end of December 2024. We look at GDP growth rate post-COVID, 0.5% to 5.7% to December 2024. But again, if we want to do a proper assessment, or we want to look at the total economic benefits, then we shouldn't be comparing it to accounting loss, because that will not be doing justice to the issue. We should actually be looking at total economic benefits with a total economic loss. Now, the question which will be asking ourselves is, with this artificial stability that we're currently seeing, this forced nature of trying to forcefully appreciate the currency, of trying to forcefully bring inflation down below 6% all the way down. What are also some of the losses that we are also not seeing in the accounting loss itself? So what are some of the losses you think we are not seeing?
Thank you. So if we hear the industries, Family Association of Ghana Industries, complaining that Ghana is importing far more than they should, because now imported items are cheaper, and that some companies is actually threatening to shut down. If we hear the cocoa farmers complaining about how much they are actually receiving, if we look at the impact of the fiscal stability on our domestic revenue, if we look at the job creation impact, in the sense that if industries are being destroyed, then obviously unemployment is going to go up. And we actually sit down and look at this loss, we will actually see that we will not do justice to the issue. We are looking just at accounting loss. So if we want to do a proper analysis or a proper assessment, we should not be doing an assessment of accounting loss versus total economic benefit. No, we should be looking at the total economic benefits with the total economic loss.
Does this loss actually bring some economic benefit to the country, to the economy? Do you think this particular loss brings some you know?
It does.
To what extent? To what extent?
So exactly, that's why I'm making the point to country. I mean, if we want to be fair in our assessment, we should also be looking at the total economic loss. We can then make a determination as to whether the central bank is actually achieving its objective. No, again, my brother. One major function the central bank looking at its mandate is to maintain the public confidence, maintain, ensure that there's accountability, credibility, and the trust. And if we look over the years, even with the financial statement that we are currently looking at, we trying to explain what accounting treatment, accounting measure was actually employed, to come back to the numbers. Just a minute. So if we look at even what the auditors, stated in the report, we say, and I read, this is a consolidated and separate financial statement prepared in accordance with the group's own accounting policies. As a result, consolidated and separate financial statements may not be suitable for another purpose. So we want to ensure that, the response assessment, that's what saying. Then we must make sure that if the same accounting reporting standard that was used in prior years, that's the same one we're using now in order to do a proper assessment. And again, if we look at some of the policy choices and the stance of the central bank, and last year, for example, when they said they were not intervening in the forest market, something which I stated later on, the report shows that there was intervention in the forest market. The gold that was sold, the argument that was made in the time was that it was a portfolio diversification exercise.
Okay.
And back then, the argument was made that there was not a portfolio diversification exercise. Only for the financial statement to confirm that the gold was actually sold in order to generate some artificial revenue, to bring down even losses in further barrels.
Okay, Doc, I think on that score, the point has been made, but unfortunately, I'm running out of time. And let me come in studio to pick your thought on the concerns being raised by Dr. Nyami.
Well, let me say this. Some of the issues that he mentioned quite correctly, but one clear thing that we must all understand, that there is a limit to what monetary policy can do. And every central banker or every central bank governor will explain that to you. Makani, one of the best central bank governors that we've ever had, who is now running the whole country of Canada, has a very good seminal paper on. He
has raised a major concern that you could have achieved the stability with not that much loss.
You see,
how do you respond to that?
What do we do as a central bank? It's about studying, thinking, and reflection. When you are not looking at the data, you are not looking at the numbers, you can come up with whatever you think it should be. But looking at the numbers and then looking at the kind of money in circulation and its impact it would have on the economy, if it's allowed to feed through inflation, we have to go in, and we go in by looking at what is really happening. That's our job. Now, I was coming to that aspect. There's so much, there's a limit to what monetary policy can do. And therefore, monetary policy cannot address inequality, it cannot address structural problems, and so on and so forth. So there must always be that support from the broader, economy. We stay on our mandate, and whether our mandate has been achieved, we fantastically achieved that. Now, I also like what the other professor said in terms of...
Kwesi Peprah.
Yes, and that is exactly what I said from the beginning. Cash is fact, profit is an opinion. And I'm glad he brought in the cash flow element of it. I didn't go deeper into that because I didn't want to get it that technical. The cash flow statement should really tell you whether we have that, shock absorbers or that cushioning which would enable us to go on as a going concern. The last statement I would make is that the account as presented is not a qualified account. The auditors, be it as in the accounting treatment and so on and so forth, also made very strong statements regarding the fact that, paraphrasing, that there is nothing that suggests that a significant part of our operations will be curtailed in the foreseeable future, and therefore we remain policy solvent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bernard Otabil is the Director of Communications for the Bank of Ghana. And earlier you heard from Professor Williams Kwesi Pepra. He is a lecturer and professor of finance at Andrews University in the United States. And also you heard from Dr. Nyame Befi. He is also an economist and a lecturer at GIMPA. And we've been looking at the Bank of Ghana's 15.6 billion loss for the 2025 financial year. And of course, you've also been listening to us on Joy 99.7 FM and Love 99.5 FM. And this has been The Probe. You can log on to myjoyonline.com to get more on this particular story. My name is Carlos Calony. Thank you so much for watching. Next week, we see you again. Bye-bye.
Mothers give us everything, love, strength, and life itself. And it's time to give back. Joy FM
presents the Joy Mommy's Day Out.
Join us on Saturday,
May 9th,
for a day bursting with thrills. We'll have your day packed with irresistible activities like paddle boating on calm waters, an adrenaline rush with horseback riding, quad biking, exciting safari tour, friendly competitions such as dance contests, and wrap the prize, a chance to meet the mysterious Ojafokwa crocodile revered as the protector, and to top it all off, a delicious feast of local dishes and drinks accompanied by the sensational sounds of the Ajinkor band. Come, let's crown our mothers with joy and adventure at the Crown Forest. For inquiries, call Lois on 059-1709-309. The Joy FM Crown Forest experience is proudly brought to you by the Crown Forest, where nature meets luxury.
Entrepreneurs are not reckless people. They are calculated risk takers. So if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you are able to balance very finely where the opportunities lie, where the risks lie, and then be able to balance them carefully to ensure that you get more successful outcomes than disastrous outcomes.
Hello and welcome to Springboard of Virtual University. My name is Albert Okran. Welcome you to Ghana's foremost developmental program and that place where the greatest minds in the world converge. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation in partnership with Enterprise Group, MTN Ghana, and the Ghana Growth Program, a collaboration between Mastercard Foundation and Springboard. Our media partners, Joy FM, Joy News Television, the graphic newspapers, and the Springboard channel on YouTube. Well, for some time now, we've been discussing the entrepreneurial mindset, and fittingly so because there's so much that can be done in that space in Ghana and across Africa. We've been trying to find out who is exactly an entrepreneur. Are they born or made? Where do they find those skills from? Can they be taught in class? Can they be passed on genetically or by association? And most importantly, how do you identify an entrepreneur when you see one? My guest for today will help us wrap up these series of conversations, and I think he's more than qualified to do so, having spanned academia, enterprise development, and of course, industry for a few decades. He is a marketing scholar, recently voted as one of Ghana's top 1,000 scientists in the World Scientist and University Rankings for the year 2026, written a number of publications, and a professor of marketing, my own Professor Robert Ibohinson. Prof, good to see you.
Good to see you too, sir. I was saying it's been a while, so I pray that from today I'll be more regular on this platform.
Prof, you have a permanent seat in this house.
Oh. Remember there was a time you said I could even come and record 50 sessions if I like. I'll take you up on that now.
Indeed.
Because I have a lot of things I want to say now.
Indeed.
Let me start with a bit of my background. So 23 years ago, I was working as technical advisor on innovation and entrepreneurship to a minister for private sector development in Ghana. And back then, we used to go to secondary schools and superintend SIFE competitions. And, we're trying to fund entrepreneurial flames. We're doing some TV programs. We went to get FC Perfumery. There was a guy who had a transport business. I think he had a chartered accountancy background. And we're called it captains of industry. And we're showing all over. So when you say I've been around this game for quite a while, it's very true at various levels. And then I cut my teeth in advertising, working for an excessively entrepreneurial firm. So I've had like a front seat, to do so entrepreneurship thing, both from a policy standpoint, advising a minister of state, and then through working in an entrepreneurial business, and then doing stuff in university settings that could be developed. Look, we introduced 7-8 years ago an MSc International Business Degree program, totally explosive. I remember when I was head of department in 2018, in 1 year, my sales of special programs was over $1 million when you convert from Ghana cedis to USD. So what I can say is that somebody who has an entrepreneurial mindset is a restless opportunity identifier. Like it's like when you are walking around, you have feelers out whether you are asleep or you are awake. In fact, if you're a Christian, it's even worse because God can also visit you and share ideas with you.
I had a friend who called entrepreneurs opportuniacs.
That's just what it is, because it's almost as if what others don't see, you see. I mean, my friend and senior brother, Dr. Sarah Japon, always says that this baller thing is because it just came to him. He had traveled to China to go and do T-shirt printing because it was an election period. And then he saw some tricycle thing, and then suddenly the thing hit him. And he's been at it for decades. So I think what it is that an opportunity mindset is defined first by restlessness. You are incredibly restless. And I think it is available to both full-time opportunity seekers who are private sector people, but also to people who work in established organizations who are also restless about bringing change.
By that definition, you are saying that an entrepreneurial mindset is not the preserve of that person that has started a business and calls themselves an entrepreneur.
Not at all.
Mindset that can be found in a pastor, in a corporate person,
absolutely,
in a politician, in also a business owner.
You are a possibility evangelist. It's like when you arrive, all the problems we're discussing in that meeting will dissolve because you came. And it's almost as if you are more interested in fathoming way forward, new ideas, blue ocean thinking, rather than coming to join the complainers who see nothing but doom and gloom.
Must that entrepreneurial person always be a maverick?
Not so much. I mean, entrepreneurs are not reckless people. They are calculated risk takers. So if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you are able to balance very finely where the opportunities lie, where the risks lie, and then be able to balance them carefully to ensure that you get more successful outcomes than disastrous outcomes. So you're not reckless like Maverick. I think you're a calculated risk taker, but your opportunity orientation is particularly sharp. I mean, the first defining characteristic of somebody who has an entrepreneurial mindset is that you have a crazy opportunity orientation.
Backed by restlessness.
Backed by restlessness. And then on the back of that opportunity entrepreneurship, you have a strong growth because the most successful entrepreneurs are not selfish. You find that typically the problem they want to solve has more of a communal benefit than a personal benefit. But in solving those hard, knotty problems, profit comes to them. So the most successful entrepreneurs are not ones who want to have enough money to buy their wife a Lamborghini and send their children to Ivy League schools. They generally go out to want to solve big problems, and then by virtue of the fact that they are so successful at it, the market pays them a premium for the quality of the problems they solve. So I think that is how they operate.
Will it be the case then that if a person at the point of inception is obsessed with the profit or the cash that will come out of it, there is a likelihood that they may fail?
I think there's a likelihood they may fail, particularly because I didn't even begin telling you the 5 pillars of an entrepreneurial mindset. But the first one was the opportunity I spoke about, the growth one I spoke about. But the third one is resilience. If you start out with money, it's very difficult to be resilient when problems come because you didn't set out to stay the long course. You set out to make and then the is not working. You just pack your bags and leave. But if you go with a sense of